Welcome to the podcast. So this is the episode of the addendum and conclusions. This is just a combination of the two videos. And normally there is extra content on the podcast, and unless I can get a hold of the transcripts from like the Jacob Pritchard case or something along those lines, then this is pretty much just the audio version of the video. I might, before this goes out, I might try and see if there is something, because I always like to put something in a little bit extra for the podcast. So I'll see if I can put something in there. But other than that, at the moment in time, this is the combination of the two videos. Yeah, like and subscribe. Like, why would you go in to an apartment? You kill someone, you then leave, you close the door over, and then start pounding to wake the neighbours up. We're only just taking the word for it, essentially, that the CCTV of this incident happening. There's no stills, there's no recording. Okay, so I've just got done editing the conclusion and addendum video, and I'm going to have to break this into two parts because it's quite long. So to make it more digestible, that's what I'm going to do. I do feel everything that is in here is relevant, and which is why I'm doing it this way. Because normally I would just edit the videos down and include the extra information in the podcast, but as I say, I think it's all relevant, especially Jacob Pritchard case, which is covered in this video, which flips it round on its head for me. It changes my opinion on the matter. And also there's two further cases that's been brought to my attention, and going forward I will look into these, and that's excluding the Michael David Hicks one, which I address in this video. But going forward, these two other cases I'm definitely going to look into because they're quite interesting and all these add up. So really appreciate it. Like and subscribe, and hope you enjoy the video. Welcome back. So I've looked into all 8 cases now, and this is time for the addendum and conclusions video. I've looked a little bit into the 9th case with Michael David Hicks that was seen recently, but so little is known about that case, it would be hard to cover any information on it. It'd be like pushing water uphill with a rake. There's nothing really to look into on that, which is a shame because it would be an interesting 9th case. But we'll crack on with this for the addendums and conclusions. So I'll fit the addendums in on the videos that I'm covering in today's episode. I mean, this kind of goes through all of them a little bit briefly in some way, maybe not all, but we'll see what sort of data that needs an addendum fitted to it and how that changes any outcome. And there is one quite interesting one, but we'll crack on. So to start with the Melissa Casias case. So with Melissa Casias, there were reports that the clothes on the side of the road weren't hers. Now, on another YouTube channel called Crime Junkie, which cracking channel, seen some of the videos on there, really good. Shout out to them. There was a comment from a user claiming to be the daughter of Casias, saying the clothes weren't hers and other stuff. So I'll read that out now. So here's the comment. It's at Sierra Casias 4452. This is a daughter commenting. I can say for a fact those clothes found in clue number 6, obviously a reference to that clue number in the Crime Junkie video, are not my mum's. I've seen them for myself. They aren't even brands I have ever seen in my house. My mum, for a fact, is not known to clinch her jeans with a hair tie, in parentheses. We are not some lower class people who can't afford to buy new clothes when they don't fit. The state police have not sent them out for a reason. They aren't hers. And strangely enough, the comment underneath by at SIN1US 6 months ago again, I'm the person that found the clothes. They weren't her clothes. We only reported them just to be sure they didn't have anything to do with the case. Sierra Mark confirmed 100% that they didn't belong to her. And again, he recomments, subcomment onto that again. This is from the at SIN1US. Me and my wife also didn't say that since she lost weight, she may have done that. Okay. Now, the kind of comment and everything, I suppose the underlying sort of tone to this aside, the question here is, I don't know if that's her door. I've looked up. I mean, it could be. It's entirely plausible. But I've looked up a profile, and it seems like a generic profile. I'll put this up. You can see here, there's Sierra Casias, the profile on YouTube. There's no playlist or anything. When you zoom into the top bar, the photo at the top, it actually seems like it's pixelated, almost like a photo of a photo. That's, when you kind of download a lower resolution photo, it seems like that. I believe the account was going for about 6 years. So maybe of interest, maybe not. And then if we look at also the SIN1US people who found the clothes at the side of the road on his account. Again, it's kind of like a generic picture at the top, another one in the circle there. And again, this was about the same time, 6 years ago, this was created. It's been going since. No other further information on the profile at all. No playlist, no home. Again, this could be just someone online. There's no way to tell if this is her daughter. I get a kind of bot vibe from the profile. Maybe that's just me being slightly pessimistic on things like this. Just with the lower resolution on the top bar of both of the profiles, both of them are neutral and be going like about the same length of time. Just so happens they comment directly underneath one another, which I think is strange as well. Like you've got her commenting literally the first comment, something underneath. You know, maybe it's the first comment, maybe it's arranged by number of votes or something. I don't know, but under that one directly, the person who found the clothes and stuff like that, and it's just, I don't know. It seems a bit weird, but there was a comment from a cousin as well, and I think this one's different. See, for me, this one looks like a genuine profile, and I put this up, and we can see that from the cousin. So this is at Ariana Chavez 5011. This is my prima bracket cousin. Thank you for highlighting her disappearance and getting so many more people in on the solving the case. We've all been thinking about her, and my mum, dad, aunts and uncles still go out to investigate anytime we get a tip. Praying for you, Missy, and emojis. Okay, and one thing to note is on her profile, and I'll pull up her profile. Okay, here we go. So on her profile, you can see you've got playlists there. There's a lot more information. I mean, there's even 2 video uploads. The actual profile picture itself looks more natural. Looks like how a profile picture would be if it's a person. I know it's got the blank square at the top on the banner, but you know, generally speaking, you just kind of get more of a this is an actual person vibe about this profile. Also, further to note, which I noticed, her cousin didn't comment under the daughter's comment or vice versa, and I found that kind of strange because I mean they are theoretically they are related. So you know, if they're seeing this sort of thing on the profile, you know, why wouldn't you send even just like a best wishes or something like that? But I don't know. I feel the cousin's comment's genuine, and I'm more skeptical about the daughter and the person who found the clothes, their comments. But then that opens up the question, you know, if these are bots, why is there bots putting these comments on there to kind of detract from certain information? Would it change the case that much by this detraction? Likely not. Likely it wouldn't change it. So then it goes back to, you flip-flop back to the idea that, you know, maybe these are genuine profiles of a daughter and the person who found the clothes. So it could just be an instance of pure coincidence. I mean, I do get a bot vibe from it, and I'd imagine like bot accounts would be the sort of that would lay dormant until you kind of activate. So maybe they created several like 6 years ago, and they would activate them close to each other, put in the information. You can change your username and that kind of stuff, but I don't think it would dramatically change anyone's opinion of this case. So at the same time, I don't know why it would be necessary if there was something more sinister behind this, why it would be absolutely, you know, necessary to sow that little seed of doubt, which isn't really that substantial. So perhaps they are genuine. So for me, the bulk of the Melissa Casias case still stands. I think we could probably still get a rough assumption of the case without having to consider the clothes anyway. There's numerous other factors involved in that. Okay, so now Jacob Pritchard case. This one's quite interesting because I initially just ruled this down to a genuine tragedy, and from some of the new information that I've looked up for this addendum, I don't know. I'm not sure about this. I was probably a bit presumptuous there, but we'll go into that. So there's some people that stated, and I've seen on the Reddit pages, and I think there was a comment as well in the video that said the 911 call, in the transcript, the person on the phone uses guys plural. Now, I try tracking down a copy of the 911 call. We can't. And I find, I even trying to find the exact transcript as well. That seems to have gone. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was available earlier, but it seems to not be available now, or I can't seem to get hold of it. I can only find snippets of bits like in press releases. And this is quite strange, really, because bizarrely, I looked into previous cases such as Christian Glass and Gabby Petito, and the full 911 calls, the transcripts were made public. The actual call themselves, everything was available, but not in this case. And this is one thing that I found, which is a running theme with some of these cases. So I didn't just look at these. I looked at ordinary cases that were not suspicious or didn't fall within this realm, and compared the data that was released with them, and thought, well, okay, this is a standard case. How is data released and how is it treated in a normal case? And then how is it being treated in this case? And there was a clear difference in most, if not all of these cases, how the data was being released to the public. And maybe that's just a natural fluctuation, and that's why we're kind of jumping onto these a little bit, because they don't have that data. But that wasn't the primary reason for why we're jumping onto them. It was because of their connections to a certain industry. And then I suppose you have to look at this lack of transparency, this fitting that profile of what they normally do when they release these cases to the public, showing the 911 call transcripts, showing CCTV footage, all that kind of data, which we'll touch on later. That's not available in these cases. So I did find something quite interesting though on the news source who covered this incident, which is WHIO TV7, which I'm assuming is Ihio TV7. It's the local news network, I believe, that covered the incident. So if we go onto their online news coverage of this around the time, and just one thing of note on here is that this is on October 27th, so I think it's a couple of days after, but it's been edited. That's obviously the last edited time, I think. Possibly, I'm not sure if that is the case or not, but either way, this has got a time of 6:43 p.m. And then we'll compare this with the next update from it, which was on October 27th at 11:28 p.m. Good few hours later. And if we scroll through, we can see a statement that's given here by the 911 caller. So, News Centre 7 obtained 911 calls that were made in Greene County about 3 hours before Jacob travelled north. And this is a direct quote from the 911 call. I peeked my head out the door and there was a guy on her deck. And I said, hello. And he said, get back in, we have a gun. And he jumped off the deck and ran. Okay. So we have a gun, and this is the first release. Now the second one, and this is the one at 11:28 p.m. several hours later. So the glass door shattered. I think they shattered the door, the caller said, and then scrolled down, and I opened up my back door, and he said he had a gun to get back at my house, and he hopped off their patio and left. The caller said, okay. So he said he had a gun on that one. And I think you can see what I'm getting at here. There's a clear difference. The early release clearly states, and that's taken from a 911 call, the actual 911 call that they've recorded this, they've taken that data from and put it in an earlier press release on there saying we have a gun, plural. And there's another very interesting bit of information here. So let's bring this back up. You can see, so we'll go to the second article first, actually, on this. It states the glass door shattered. I think they shattered a door, the caller said. She went on, then when she went to see what was happening next door, she told the dispatcher she saw a man. I opened up my back door. He said he had a gun to get back at my house, and hopped off their patio and left. Okay. I mean, some of that doesn't really make sense. It's clearly totally different phrasing to the first one. Okay, so the first one, he woke me up out of a dead sleep. He was pounding on the door with something, a 911 caller told dispatchers. I peeked my head out the door and there was a guy on the deck, and I said, hello, and he said, get back in, we have a gun, and he jumped off the deck and ran. Okay, so that's the initial one, the early one. The second one states that he smashed the glass, broke in. They changed it to from plural to singular case, and it, straight away for me that second article is kind of to be a little bit neglected. I feel that is edited. If there was a situation where this is kind of a bit set up, changing it from we to singular and adding in different details, I think it makes it an unreliable source. So then we resort to going to the earlier source. And for me, one thing that's really interesting was the statement that he was pounding on the door with something, and then she put her head out the door, and there was a guy on her deck. So he was on the deck, clearly on the outside, pounding on the door. And she said, hello. He said, get back in. We have a gun. And he jumped off the deck and ran. Well, if he has been in there, if he's killed Jamie in this, in the condo, what was he doing on the other side of the door, pounding on, trying to get in? And then why did he run? So at what point did he come back and then kill her? Because it didn't sound, on the first report, it didn't sound like he gained access to the apartment. And on the second one, they're claiming he broke the window, but the second one's also, they've changed it from plural to singular. That just doesn't add up to me. Like, why would you go in to an apartment, you kill someone, you then leave, you close the door over, and then start pounding to wake the neighbours up? Like, I don't... And then you run away whenever they come out. I don't get that chain of events. It doesn't seem right. There's no report. I mean, they haven't reported anything about gunshots there. If she's heard him pounding on a door, I'm sure they'd report, oh, I heard the gunshots at X, Y time. You know, there's nothing about gunshots or anything. So I don't know about that. That's thrown a complete spanner in the works on this case for me. So what I also tried doing as well with this, I tried going to the Wayback Machine website to see if we can see if there was a copy of this article unedited on there, and unfortunately, it didn't work. I mean, I think it was just down. I think it was a 503 message on it when I tried accessing it and everything. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But I couldn't. It'd be great if someone could actually put this into the Wayback Machine to see what the unedited version was that was initially published of the 6:43 p.m. article, not the later one, the early one. It'd be very interesting to see what that would have been before the editing. Again, this could just be a series of coincidental mistakes. Maybe they did misquote it or something, and then they've amended it and various other things like that. And we're just kind of seeing this because we want to see it a little bit. You know, it does look suspicious though. It really does look suspicious, that editing. I mean, ultimately as well, banging on someone's door or breaking in, doing that kind of thing at 2 a.m. in the morning doesn't sound like a government assassination type thing. But maybe he was going there to warn her. You know, maybe that was the reason why he was banging on the door. He wasn't going there to kill her. He was going there to warn her. On another thing to note as well, so obviously it says he unalived himself, and this was on CCTV, like as confirmation, all the rest of it. And obviously they wouldn't show CCTV footage of that, but I'm surprised there's not at least one like still of him getting out of the car or something. Obviously not the event, but some sort of still of him getting out of the car, showing him there, perhaps with a gun, moments before. They do in other cases. They do in other cases. They show these kind of like last moment sort of footage or something just before something, and there's none of that. It's just, in fact, the whole CCTV. I don't seem to see any information on who's like any sort of availability of that. We're only just taking the word for it, essentially, that the CCTV of this incident happening. There's no stills. There's no recording. There's no like. It's just missing, and again, there's that data missing from this. Maybe that is for sensitivity reasons. I don't know, but I just would have thought, like looking at other cases, they sometimes put like a last still image or something, like just here they are at the car park even or something, or with him getting out of the vehicle. But yeah, it doesn't seem to be any of that. Again, is that us? Is that kind of looking into this a bit too much? Is it just a normal thing that they wouldn't release that kind of thing? I don't know. They have in other cases they have done, and again I've looked up previous ones that follow on. They're kind of linked to this in each department, in each of these cases, in that same area. I try to find at least about 3 or 4 cases which match the same as what we're looking at. So it gives almost like a standard whereby this is a normal standard of what they do in this situation for this police force. And I even broke it down by police force. And they do that in here. So I don't know. It could just be there could be an honest explanation for this, and we're just kind of like looking and reading between the lines a little bit too much. But this has heightened it to a bit more suspicious in my opinion. No matter which cases you look at in certain things, they have more transparent evidence available than these cases. There's even one where it shows scrawlings on the wall from one of the victims. So this is part 2 of the addendum conclusions, and this features the overall conclusion. But don't forget, there are still 2 further cases. There's more cases that come forward each time. So again, there'll be more videos on top of this. I don't know if I'll do any more conclusion videos or anything. Maybe addendum videos if it's needed. But going forward, I'll just cover the other 2 cases. Okay, so Cole Grillmair. So the first one here is I stated that the robbery Snyder was charged with was in relation to the previous incident on Grillmair's in December. But apparently it wasn't. It was a separate incident. Although I get a lot of conflicting kind of reports about this when I look into it. But I think generally what I found out was that the burglary was in relation to Grillmair's neighbour, which I think is still pretty strange for this kind of case. So the chain of events was December 20th, Snyder was on Grillmair's with a rifle. December 23rd, Snyder was released from prison in relation to that. December 28th, he was arrested for attempted burglary on Grillmair's neighbour, which then the rest follows as per the case. But that is pretty strange still. Also, further addendum, like Clano, as I said it was, is actually pronounced Clano. It's a Welsh word. Also, there were a few comments on Reddit, on a Reddit post, unfortunately I didn't save, but I do recall them at the time, and they stated that Snyder was kind of known in the area as a bit of a hoodlum. So, they were kind of implying, well, we kind of knew about this character a little bit. He was quite known in the area as a troublemaker. But again, this could be true, could be fake, but again, if you think about, and this is a basic pondering, and I'm not sure on the terminology you can kind of use here on YouTube, but if you think about someone on like a dark web, because we know this happens, there's some crime cases in America that you can look into that this happens, and if you look at someone on dark web, if they hired someone to carry out such an incident as this, then Snyder would be the sort of person, I feel anyway, would be the sort of person that would do that. But also who would be the sort of person that wouldn't be missed if he went missing or disappeared, it wouldn't raise too much concern either. So that's quite interesting. And I think, if he did say something like, I was paid to do this, he's only going to shoot himself in the foot, because that moves from a different type of crime then to the one that he's charged with currently. And also, on another note related to this, where's his statements? Where's his police statements that he's come out with? I can't find them anywhere online. Any statement about what he said in court. Even the other case that I said I'd catch up on, I think that's been postponed. It's been moved back another month. Why? Maybe there's too much heat in it. They'd have to release a statement. I don't know. But I can't find any quotations about what Snyder has said was the reason behind this. Like, I can't find any statement from him. I can't even find a picture of the guy. Like, it's hard. I think I've maybe found one that was reliable. And that was 50-50. I don't know if that was some sort of generated picture, but it's hard to find a single picture on this guy, considering this incident. Perhaps he didn't even do it. Perhaps he was set up and he's the fall guy to this. There is another incident which is a really quite interesting point, just round the corner. So this man found dead in a remote area of LA County prompt homicide investigation. Now, this is a month after Grillmair. This is a month. And it is a tragic case. A homicide investigation is underway after a man's body was found in a remote area of Los Angeles County early Thursday morning. So I've pinpointed this, and this is again near Clano. The victim was pronounced dead at the scene. Apparently, and it's quite awful, he was found in a bin or something like that. And they haven't identified this person. They've no idea. They haven't said how long the body's been out there for. And they haven't said whether foul play is suspected. So no information, no information, no information. And this is the location of it from Carl Grillmair's. Pop this up. Here you go. 8 minutes drive, just up there, round the corner. Now, does this strengthen the case for suspicion or weaken it? And maybe there's some other cause, I don't know. But I think what is strange about this is it's a month after Carl Grillmair's death. In a quite a kind of remote place like that, small area, small sort of town, to have a second case a month after, and they've not identified the man's body, they've not said if it's suspicious, there's no information around the circumstances of this person. And again, I've looked into other cases specifically for this police force. So another one I looked into was there was like a triple homicide. Also the murder of Deputy Ryan Klinkenbrummer. You know, all these other cases I've looked at, they've always released information in a certain format. It's readily available. The statements from the person who was charged, the suspect, everything, you know, 911 calls, CCTV, all the information's there on these. Like it's quite readily available. These, it just seems so secretive and cut off. There's like an information firewall that you just kind of can't gain access to this information, which is totally different to the way this exact police force does other cases. So, and again, maybe that's a coincidence and we're reading into it because that's what we want to see, or maybe there's another reason for this. And this brings me to the other case, because I stated something similar. I think I stated it. Maybe it was on the podcast, I'm not sure. But in the Nuno Loureiro case. So there is an amendment for this case. I said about the CCTV cameras in the area, and perhaps that there isn't any. Because Valente, you know, obviously carried out the Brown University shooting, then travelled up to Nuno's area, and then obviously unalived after that himself. And I said, well, you know, we got loads of CCTV around like the university, and that's all, you know, the stills and stuff like that. Again, not masses of stills, to be honest, but you know, there doesn't seem to be any release whatsoever around Brookline, I think it was in Massachusetts near Salem, or you know, Boston way. So I have a friend in that kind of area, and they know very well, and they've stated there are loads of CCTV cameras there. Why there is not one still of Valente even driving around this, some sort of still of him inside the vehicle near Nuno's, nothing released. And again, there's that data being withheld. And sorry to restate it, and I've said it so many times in this video, these instances, the data just doesn't seem to be readily available as it is in previous cases. So I even looked into other ones around the Boston area previously. So the Dr. Richard Field and Lena Bolana's case of 2018, both of them scientists again, it fits the criteria of the victim here, and clearly publicly available evidence. And I've even got, I can show you this one. So you can see here in this case, look, you know, it's got even the court photos, statements. It's even got the suspect in the hospital bed whilst he's being charged. There's even one where it shows scrawlings on the wall from one of the victims. Here, he killed my wife, scrawled on the wall. You know, the amount of evidence. It's got text messages, the actual text stream of the victim in this case at the time. And again, more footage of it all, more stills. The jury convicts. It's got all the information on the from the jury case, and there's further information on this one. But ultimately, there's no end of evidence in some of these other cases. And again, you can kind of follow this through with different ones. That you've got the case of Rakesh Chandra in 2021. no matter which cases you look at in certain things, they have more transparent evidence available than these cases. And that's where I think that's where it doesn't sit right with me how little information is available about these cases. So in the Nuno case, there's no end of data available at the Brown University part, but then soon as it goes to the Nuno Loureiro part of this, it's piecing it backwards. There's no substantial data released on this, and even throughout the whole case in general, there's not. They have released the transcripts, but again, we looked into the transcripts, doesn't mention anything about the Nuno shooting, no end of talking about Brown University. Again, it's this lack of transparency in the data in the relevant cases in comparison to these areas with previous cases, which you can see how they release the data on a non-suspicious case as such, like these. And then we start following this process through again with the other cases, with the other missing peoples, the cases of Chavez. And again, correction here, addendum, I'm saying Chavez, and it's actually Chavez, so apologies for that. So Chavez, Reza, and McCasland, they're all similar. They lack the data, that's the transparency, the publicly available data to this. So in these cases, like even the timeline of events is a lot clearer. In other cases, there's always a lot more CCTV footage, stills, photos, statements from the suspect. Like, say, even that one, the other one we looked at there, had scrawlings on the wall in the text feed of the incident. So that's kind of the data that's normally seen in cases that's within the public eye, and these are heavily in the public eye at the moment. So why there's not more data, I don't know. So this could, for me, this seems suspicious, obviously, but is it just bad? Is it just bad reporting? And again, it's that coincidental sort of aspect. We're looking at these, so we are picking apart these slightly finer than what we would other cases. But then you'd have to explain the fact that and whilst it's not a great example of cluster sampling, these other cases I've looked at on a force by force basis in an area, trying to match the victims in the scenario to as closely as I can for that area, they still have more data released. I think ultimately that there is highly likely a proportion of these that are suspicious. I just don't know what proportion it is. Like, I don't know if, I don't think 8 in 8 are suspicious, and I don't think 8 in 8 are non-suspicious. I think there would be some ratio there. So maybe it could even be 1 or 2 suspicious and 6, 7 that's not, or vice versa. And it's knowing that kind of ratio. But either way, I think there are some suspicious activities here. I think that much difference in normal reporting of cases comparison to the whole 8 cases that we have here, I just think that's not a normal distribution of coincidence. I think there's got to be a little bit more going on there. And again, I know some people will say this is just in the range of plausibility. It's normal distribution of data. Say, we pick these out and we just so happened that it's coincidental, and these bad reporting has coincided with these cases that we're specifically looking at. But it's not just about that. We're comparing it with that data, but we're also comparing several things: the security clearance of these, certain aspects of the disappearance, the connection between their own work lives as well, the subject topics that they're interested in. I just think it would be incredibly naive to assume that all 8 of these cases none are suspicious, given all the data and how we've and looking into these. Even when you compare with McCasland's disappearance with that in the local area, in pretty much all cases a body's been discovered later. And this is the other thing with these, no bodies have yet been discovered of the missing people, bearing in mind some of these that have been previously been discovered in similar areas were really remote. Like, I looked at McCasland in that area where where he was for missing persons. And I think it was all but one or something that was kind of recovered in recent years anyway, certainly. And I think some people even, like, they were in the middle of nowhere and still people found the bodies like a year later. And generally that's what it was. And I know it hasn't been that long as such. And hopefully, there's a reasonable explanation and nothing sinister or untimely's happened to him or to any of the people that's missing. But again, in the missing persons cases, when at the time, in comparison to at the time and then found later, more information was readily available about them. But on a skeptical perspective here, data anomalies do exist. And with these cases, especially in the missing persons, leaving belongings behind and disappearing seems to be a common theme. Like, even in the ones I looked at, which were obviously non-suspicious cases, these were a theme that happened with them. But then it doesn't include the phones being wiped and stuff like that. And also, one thing which I noticed was quite frequent, there was always some final money transaction. They took money out of an ATM or something and then left everything, or like along those lines. But as I stated previously in another video, if you were some sort of malicious actor and you wanted to make a scenario, you wanted to stage a scenario to look realistic, these are the things that you would include. You would make sure you would get that behavioral pattern right to make it look like a genuine scenario that we see in these other cases. So these are details you would include for consistency. Overall, after reviewing all these, I think, like, in terms of a plausibility, after looking at each one of these, I'm going to put this, I'd probably say, at about 10. I think there's for at least one, that is. I think there's too many cases for them all to be non-suspicious, as I stated. I think at least one of these there's something else going on in here, and I would say perhaps even it maybe 50%, but at least. But I think generally speak, I'd give this a 10. That at least one of these cases is there's something nefarious going on.